Good morning.
It feels like church in here. Or sound like the social hour when I walked in. At 3:45, I think we'll get started. I do believe some of my colleagues might show up. But we're going to move ahead with the agenda. It's Wednesday, November 14th. This is the Housing Community Economic Development Committee. We have several items on the agenda.
Councilman, would you like me to read number 1 into the record?
Pardon me?
Would you like me to read number 1 into the record?
Yes.
Item number 1, Lhd Report relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 163.03D to increase the amount of the Lhd General Manager is authorized to advance for tenant relocation benefits from $50,000 to $100,000 per property when properties are vacated as a result of extensive and serious code violations.
The item will hold special. We have a card on that item, item number 1. Let's go to item number 2.
Item number 2, Lhd Report and CAO Report and Resolution relative to authorization to issue up to $7.5 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds for the Seven Palms Apartments project located at 12831 San Fernando Road, Los Angeles, and approval of related loan documents.
That one has no card. We'll approve the CEO report, and if my colleagues should be here on time and before the meeting is closed, hopefully we can get a movement as a quorum, but at the moment we'll approve the CEO report.
Councilman, do you want to hold public hearing on that?
Pardon me?
Do you want to hold public hearing on that item?
We have no cards on that one. Item
You can
3.
open public hearing and close it on the record.
Let's open the public hearing and we have a public comment on this item. See none, we'll close the public hearing. Number 3.
Number 3, Lhd Report and CAO to report on program income funds for the Neighborhood Stabilization Program and authorization relative to an amendment to the contract with Restored Neighborhoods LA Inc. to increase the amount by $5,792,223 for continuation of Neighborhood Stabilization Program activities and related instructions to the controller.
Well, that one we will, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning, Council Member. My name is Madeline Rackley, and I'm here from the CAO. The report before you is a request from the Housing Department to execute the Sixth Amendment to contract number 11563 with Restore Neighborhoods LA to support the city's neighborhood stabilization program. Under this contract, RNLA is responsible for the acquisition, rehabilitation, and sale of foreclosed and abandoned housing properties to meet the NSP grant requirements. The amount being added to the contract is actually $7.79 million. Please note that this amount is different from what was originally requested by the Housing Department in their October 23rd transmittal. Since they released that transmittal, they requested an additional $2 million be added to the NSP3 portion of the RNLA grant. So the total would be $7.79 million. And that the reason they would like to do that is because they have a deadline to spend 50% of the funds by next March, and they can do that by adding this additional $2 million to the RNLA contract. The report also asks to make some technical adjustments to receive and appropriate the NSP funds. Attachment A of the report has a history of this contract with all of the amendments, and it shows that if you approve this amount of $7.8 million, then RNLA will have received $117 million over the life of this contract, and they have spent almost $100 million of that.
Has spent how much?
Almost $100 million.
$100 million.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to come on up? Thank you for that. I appreciate that. When we look at the impact of this service, there was a few months ago, not a couple of years, we started looking at areas that were affected by this debacle that we've been going through with the national economy and how it's hit Los Angeles. Now, with this effort, how do we start demonstrating impact? Can you give me a sense of what has been accomplished and what kind of trends are we seeing and challenges that are in front of us? And is there any way to refer to how my colleagues understand how their districts are being addressed?
Certainly. Good morning, Councilman Rushmore Cervantes, along with Doug Swager with the Los Angeles Housing Department. Neighborhood Stabilization 1, 2, and 3. The city received approximately $143 million. The areas of target were identified by looking at areas of the city that were hardest hit by foreclosure, reduced values, unemployment, and fraudulent type loans. Their main areas of concentration are South Los Angeles, portions of East LA, as well as the Northeast San Fernando Valley. The target at one point was 1,100 units total to be acquired. It was ratcheted down from approximately 15 to about 1,100 based on what we were able to determine on the acquisition as well as rehab costs. To date, we've acquired units, approximately 850 to date. The NSP
150 units.
850 units, approximately, so far. That includes both single-family as well as multi-family. NSP 1 and NSP 2 consists of approximately $132 million. We must spend all of that money by February 2013. To date, we are approximately 90% there to spend that money. Some of the actions that are before you this morning will help the department through Restored Neighborhood Los Angeles, as well as the Housing Department, achieve the 100% expenditure for that grant period. To demonstrate success or impact on the community, and that's really getting to what your question is, what has this $143 million done for the City of Los Angeles? Part of the grant's requirement is to report back to HUD and, of course, to the Mayor and Council as to what the impact is. But first, let me say that the Housing Department is looking to hit the target of February 2013 so we can have the 100% expenditure, report back to the committee, council, and the mayor as to what we've achieved. And part of the success will be gauged not only on hitting the target as far as money spent, but also the number of units that have been acquired and rehabilitated and put back in the market. But there's also standards that we must adhere to that were part of the initial application that when we applied for the neighborhood stabilization money, and that is to stabilize the community, looking at the reduction of the number of foreclosed properties, seeing a stabilization of the land value, the property values, to ensure that there's not a continued reduction in those key components, the economic drivers that necessitated the infusion of the money in the first place. So this is going to be over a period of time that we're going to see the impact of the infusion of the money in the community. So it's not only, and again I must add this, not just the units that we've acquired, they're rehabilitating or building new, but also we've provided 9 parcels of land to the Department of Recreation and Parks for the creation of pocket parks, 2 of which have already been opened. So it's a matter of creating a sense of community both from the park space, but also taking the worst of the worst properties in the community. But for the neighborhood stabilization money, nobody else would take these properties on, and bringing them to a standard that are energy efficient, but also are going to be sustain the test of time because of the quality of the material going into it.
So we've been able to allot a significant number of funds into the local neighborhoods.
Correct.
Do you have a profile of these neighborhoods, of where they've been located, and to what degree you've been able to move that program into a certain amount of completion? I'm assuming different areas have different levels of completion.
Absolutely. Part of it was driven by what was made available, what we could identify as properties that we could acquire through the trust. And there was a national trust that was created whereby participating banks would put their foreclosed properties into this trust and give Restore Neighborhoods Los Angeles as well as the City of Los Angeles first right of refusal. So depending on the success of what was available and the price range, we were successful in some areas, maybe not so much in other areas. But we will provide a full report, and again, the target was at the end of February.
How do you choose where to go?
Well, we looked, the areas that were identified, Councilman, were in the initial application. Those are the areas that were targeted exclusively for acquisition.
How about specific locations?
Once we started acquiring parcels of land, we looked to acquire parcels of land in and around those areas, preferably on the same street if we could, to have the most significant impact. The idea was to have a concentration of parcels of land acquired so that we can have maximum impact on that community.
Okay.
So we can discuss more in detail when we have the maps to show you the successes and areas of where we learned.
I understand, but mechanically, I'm trying to understand. I have several issues in different locations in my district. The other day, there was a profile of a house in Glassell Park where an artist took it over to illustrate the negligence of our society and how we have impacted families and all the things that happened in that process. Too long to detail here.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is, I'm assuming there's someone in your department who sees an address, there's an issue there, and someone says, we're going to go there and fix that, we're going to address it. Who is that person?
If it's a single-family home and that is owned, occupied by that owner, that's a building and safety matter, that's driven by a complaint, calls to the city through Department of Building and Safety. Department of Building and Safety is responsible for both single-family as well as vacant multifamily.
And they identify the structure that needs to be given some level of attention by the city?
Upon a complaint that's received from a community regarding a specific house, whether it be nuisance abatement type of complaints or relative to a legal structure, depending on the type of structure it is, whether it be single-family, multifamily, the housing department or building and safety, depending on the jurisdiction, will send out inspectors to go inspect those properties.
So there's a unit in your department that's making that decision?
Again, depending on what type of structure it is. If it's a single family.
I understand that.
Yeah,
I understand
yes,
that.
both
But
departments.
someone
are
is
charged.
saying yes, no. Someone's saying green light, red light.
Right.
Who is saying that?
I'm sorry, who's saying green light, red light?
Right. You got an address, yes, we're going to put money into this, and we're not. Who is making that decision?
It's very clear to the two departments that are charged with the responsibility of inspecting residential properties in the city of Los Angeles. It's single family, vacant multifamily, that's the building safety department. If it's multifamily, occupied, that's housing. There's a very clear line as to who's responsible for inspection of those properties. For the single family and vacant multifamily, it's driven solely on a complaint basis. Once the complaint comes in, building and safety sends out an inspector to inspect that single-family home. I can't. And
Let me ask it this way.
Well, I can't
Who
speak to-
signs off on the okay? Who signs off on that decision
the decision to go out or decision on
to invest the money?
to buy
To-
property.
To put in the dollars?
Oh, referring to acquiring properties.
Yes.
Okay. When it comes to single-family homes, to acquire the properties in the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, that's the Los Angeles House Department and...
Let's do this, Rushmore.
Yeah.
Let's meet outside this meeting. I want to understand the decision-making process. We'll do that
Sure.
outside. Look, I'm trying to understand, there's a unit somewhere in your department who's looking at these properties. It's being brought to your attention because a whole series of actions have been taken. There's a blighted property. Someone is making a decision, let's put the investment that we need to address that concern. I'm okay with that. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
The question is, who is making that decision? You're going to ask me to wait till February to get a report back on how you spent this money. Meantime, I have colleagues who want certain cases to be addressed in their district. So how do I get my colleagues access to your decision-making so that we know we can address the priorities of our district?
Councilman, we'll report back in 30 days with a complete report, but I'll meet with you offline to discuss your specific concerns.
Right, because that, again, it's already complicated as it is. You're dealing with so many different parties. But I'm certain there are issues, like in my district and other council offices, where we need to know how do we address those priorities.
And the only thing I'd state relative to the decision-making, you've got to keep in mind for parcels of land, homes in your district or any of the districts in the city of LA that are blighted, they have to be foreclosed. The banks have foreclosed on them, and they have to make them available to the city. So you may have a parcel of land that's a blighted condition. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have the ability to acquire that property unless they go through.
That's me. I'm being very careful how I'm asking this, because I don't want you to make commitments you can't keep. I don't want anyone listening to this is saying the city's buying properties now, let's do it.
Right.
I'm not saying that either. I just need to know what the process is, how we're making the decisions. In the midst of all the chaos, when you got banks selling portfolios of properties to other banks, and you have owners who are right now in the fog because their titles have been blurred, there's no real accountability. It's a mess out there. And the people that are suffering the most are the working people who are trying to just keep a roof over their heads. And in the middle of that dialogue, we have to figure this out. So I hate to be in a position where February comes around, you show me how you spend all the money, not you, but how we made these decisions to spend this money, and we left some real eyesores out there. We left out priorities that should have been addressed. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Okay.
Okay, so I appreciate this. And good job. I know you're dealing with a Herculean effort here.
Well, we'll report back in 30 days, Councilman.
Okay, thank you, sir. That was a fun one. All right. We do have a card on this item. There was a lot of questions, but boy, that's where you open up to a lot of other stuff too. That was pretty good. All right. We have Ruth Sarnoff. Good morning.
I would just like to indicate that I think the process of bringing reports to public attention is too little and too late, and I really am offended that one would have to speak privately about who the public officials are that sign off on documents or on decisions. I think that should be a matter of public record.
It will be. It will be. I'm just trying to.
And I'm also concerned that this will come up again. It looks like the middle of December, right before the Christmas holidays, and at a very bad time. And that it doesn't give enough time for community input. And I would think that there should be a public hearing around this, because it is important that the community weigh in on how successful this program has been in the past and what the glitches are for the future. And so I would request that you hold a public hearing on this, and that you maximize the inclusion and alert the community to the fact that this is happening. It's too much happening below the radar. And I wish I could be more specific about this. I don't know what part of it I support or what parts of it I don't know enough. And I think there are lots of other people that really would like a deeper consideration. And I think the hello says how my time is up. Is that the way you do it?
No, yeah, I guess so.
Hello on there.
It's better than bye.
I don't know. Goodbye would be more appropriate. So
Hello.
I just think there has to be more transparency, more consideration of what this means. I work with Occupy Fights Foreclosures. We deal with families being evicted. We watch certain trends.
Ms. Sarnoff,
and that
pardon me.
includes the gentrification.
Ms. Sarnoff, pardon me, your time is up. The clock was not working.
But we gave you more time, you should know that. We did give you more time, but I do want to just say that I agree with you in many aspects. This is my first time chairing this committee. The issues are profound. I want to be fair to the administrator, and I'm asking him all these questions. He's surprised by the nature of my questions. He was prepared for this, so I didn't want to put him on the spot. There's nothing to hide here. I want to do everything in a very transparent way. We'll have a discussion with my colleagues. I'm not the chair of this committee. I need to go through my protocol and speaking to my colleagues out of respect and understand where we want to take this. But your words are not falling on deaf ears.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that takes care of the public comment card, takes care of that item. Okay. See, what I usually do in my other committee, I run through the whole agenda, and then I just state what's continued, what isn't, and then I go into each item. Maybe we do it differently here. So we have just a change of approach here. So let me do this, because there's probably people waiting for other items, and if they're going to be continued, et cetera, we're going to keep them here and longer than we need to. So let me just run through the agenda.
Sure.
And then we'll go back. The items that we called special, you can describe each item, and then we'll take public comment cards. Now, when you're asking about public hearings, do I have to officially say open public hearing, close public hearing?
That's been our practice in this committee in the
Okay.
past.
All right. So let me just run through this very, very quick. Item 4, I don't have any cards on 4, and I'd like to approve the CEO report. We'll open the public comment, seeing no cards, and we'll close it. So there'll be the official statement on that. So we'll approve the CEO report, see no cards on 4. 5, we do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards on 5, and so we'll call that special. But that one we plan to note and file the report, in as much as it is an informational item. 6 will continue to December 5th for the mayor's request. And I don't see any cards on 6, so that's continued. On 7, we do have a card, we'll call that special. 8, we'll have a special as well. So the only item we'll be continuing is item 6. 5, we will note and file. We do have cards on 5. And 4, yes. And number 3, we'll approve the CEO report on number 3. We've already had public comments. We'll open and close the public comment.
Pardon me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We haven't addressed item number 1.
I'm sorry?
Item number 1 we haven't addressed.
Okay,
Is
good.
that going to be called special?
Yes, that was called special for card. And thank you for reminding me. I was about to jump to number 4. So item number 1, we'll read that to the record.
Sure. Item number 1, Lhd report relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code 163.03D to increase the amount of the Lhd general manager is authorized to advance for tenant relocation benefits from $50,000 to $100,000 per property when properties are vacated as a result of extensive and serious code violations.
So we have a quick presentation from the Housing Department on number 1. Good morning, gentlemen.
Councilman, how are you?
All right, how you guys doing?
Domingo Salceda, Director of Code Enforcement, Housing Department. The request is for the committee to approve the extension or the increase of relocation benefits that are paid by the department in the event that the owners fail to pay relocation benefits to tenants that have been displaced or evicted from their homes as a result of code violations that are so extensive that they require the removal of these people. Currently, it's $50,000 per property. When this ordinance or when this program came into effect, the amounts that were being given to the tenants that are displaced was $2,000 and $5,000. Currently, it's $18,000 maximum and $8,000.
I'm sorry, we're having conversations back there. Can we take them outside if we need to have a conversation? Yeah, we can hear your echo. We can hear you really good over here. Thank you, guys. Go ahead.
So, Okay, so when it exceeds the amount currently over $50,000, we have to come back to council and for approval to exceed that amount. That allows the tenants to have to wait, requires the tenants have to wait for the approval to take place before we can actually issue the checks for the relocation benefits. What we're requesting is that we increase the amount to $100,000 to afford us the ability to pay the benefits in a more timely manner in the event that the owners fail to pay and the department decides to pay the relocation benefits.
Okay, anything else? No? Okay. Well, thank you. Again, this is only when it's necessary,
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
What prompted the increase?
What prompted the increase? Again, the increase was due to the fact that we would have to come back to council to get an approval for the increase to exceed the $50,000 in benefits that we are required to pay, that we pay the tenants whenever they're required to be relocated.
What's the typical amount we pay a tenant?
Well, currently it's $18,350, I believe it is.
Yeah, depending on the status of the tenant, either it is a eligible tenant who lived there for about 3 years, we pay $98.50 per tenant. And if it is a qualified tenant, the relocation amount is $18,650. So with $18,650, basically, to max out the $50,000 would be approximately 3 units, not even 3 units. So we have to come to get approval with council. And many times, our jurisdiction is the minimum 2 or more residential rental units. So we would hit that limit less than 3. And therefore, we're requesting that to be increased.
Okay. It just cuts down the loop and makes it more efficient. Okay. All right. So we do have a card on this item? We do have a card, but thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
All right. We have Michael Millman on this one?
Yes. Good morning, Michael Millman, 2100 Sawtell, West LA. I live in Mar Vista. Yeah, for $100,000, you roll that $100,000 right over to AGLA, and I'll give you 6 months, and I'll take out of your REAP program 6,000 units. Right now in REAP, there are folks, mom and pops, not slumlords, mom and pops in slumlord, not slumlords, who are being brutalized by LAHD in terms of not getting out on a small, minor situation that does not affect habitability, safety, or sanitation. They don't speak English. They are being targeted by LAHD because they're diverse and they just don't understand it. You give AGLA the 100,000, we'll take 6,000 units out of REAP in 6 months, put them back on the market, keep them at low income, keep them below the market, and you'll have 6,000 units. We're opposed to spending any more money at LAHD because we don't think they have the skill, knowledge, training, sensitivity, compassion, and understanding. We have the plumbers, the electricians, the roofers. We can do this for you. Our fee is $0. We want no money. We just want to bring housing back to the city we love. Our charge is no charge, no money. You give us the 100,000, we'll close down REAP for you. We'll shut down REAP for you. Thank you for your time. Happy Thanksgiving.
No, that sounds really good, but let me just ask one question.
Yes, sir.
How do you get to that formula?
Because we're in private business, sir, and we only know how to do one
So
thing.
do you have cases that average out the type of problem is per property, and you've been able to phase in costs associated to those types of problems?
Absolutely, because we have in our group over 60,000 small owners. We turn around problems, sir, in less than 48 hours, sometimes in less than a couple of hours. Because if we have problems, we don't serve our customer, which is our tenant. We're in private business. We turn over and give you a good product very fast. You give me the 100,000 and I'll close down REAP.
I've always believed if government is doing better than private business, we're in trouble. So to me, that's
No,
the
we're
reality.
private business.
I understand that. I'm just saying if we're doing better than you, we're in real trouble.
No, you're not doing better than us.
Okay, so then we're not in so much trouble. But the fact is, I would like to see what you're saying in writing. If you give me a one-sheet executive summary of what you're talking about, I'd like to see that.
Very well, I can send it to your office.
All right.
Thank
Sounds
you
good.
for your time, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right. Okay, that takes care of item number 1. So we will adopt the LHD report. And it's 9:15, so I'm not going to hold my breath for my colleagues here. No, I don't think so. Okay. All right, that's item number 1. Next would be item number 4. Okay.
We approved the CAO report for item number 4. So we're on item number 5.
Okay, we did that. Okay, 5.
Item number, sorry.
Please, go ahead.
Item number 5, continued from October 31st, 2012. Department of City Planning report in response to a fiscal year 2012-13 adopted budget recommendation and motion Parks Perry relative to what federal funds such as home, HOPWA, and CDBG are being jeopardized if the city is not in compliance regarding the housing element. And this is pursuant to the adoption of the mayor's 2012-13 budget on May 21st, 2012. And this issue is also referred to the Plum Committee, your Plum Committee, that is.
Let me somebody hear it again. Okay. So, let's have the staff come on up. Okay, I guess they're strategizing outside. Are those the folks I chased out? Oh, no. That was a pretty animated conversation. I wonder what's happening now. Come on, let's go. Is it curious? Do you have your soft shoes? Do some tap dancing? Okay. This is really awkward. I never had this happen. It must be serious. Jeez.
We can hold this item in.
They're not here. Oh, my God. Okay, we'll hold this item. Let's go to the next item.
Did you want to, council member, did you wish to move to the public comment while we're waiting, or did you prefer to go to the next item?
Let's go to the next item because I'd like for the public, the folks who are going to be making a comment, to hear the discussion before they speak. We have several cards on this item, too.
Our next item would be number 7.
Okay.
Item number 7, City Attorney Report and Ordinance in response to motion Garcetti-Wesson relative to amending Section 164.04 of Article 4 of Chapter 16 of the Los Angeles Municipal Code to eliminate the exemption from the registration requirements of the foreclosure registry program for lenders, beneficiaries, or trustees who register foreclosed property with the Mortgage Electronic Registration System, also known as MERS.
Okay. Is that the staff coming up? The staff report on this?
Good morning, Deborah Breithaupt for the City Attorney's Office.
Good morning.
And Helen Morales from Los Angeles Housing Department. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Elizabeth Treviso from the Housing Department.
Thank you. Good morning. So when we look at this process, give me your reports and tell me where you're at right now with this.
Currently, the City Attorney's Office have assisted us in drafting the ordinance with regards to the removal of the MERS. And the requirement then would be that they would register with the Los Angeles Housing Department as opposed to requiring or allowing the registration with the MERS program.
Okay, so what's the advantage of doing that?
Well, the advantage is currently we thought that working with MERS, we would be able to obtain the information necessary that the Los Angeles Housing Department, as well as Department of Building and Safety, requires for maintaining these properties and contacting the correct owner. And the data was not available through MERS. They had guaranteed that it was public information, that we were going to be able to generate reports off of it so that we could obtain the data necessary, and it just never materialized.
So who created MERS?
MERS was created by the lending institutions.
So this is the fox in the hen house?
Well, it was created by the lending institutions, but they were to provide public access so that all of that information, when they were transferring, all of the properties would be available. Just never transpired correctly, and the data was old.
But there's a slight wrinkle here. So we no longer are relying on MERS. We're asking the banking institution to now go to the city and register it as foreclosed?
To go to the registry to register it with the Los Angeles Housing Department, yes.
As a foreclosed property?
No, at the time of notice of default.
Notice of default?
Right.
Okay. And if the owner who is caught in a title, there's ambiguity to the title, there's lack of clarity, maybe there's some shenanigans going on by predatory loans, or you have manipulation by real estate agents, or, God forbid, government officials involved in the process. Do you have a way to verify the status of that address, or we're just going to go by how the bank or whatever lending institute is stating is the condition of that loan? How do we verify and support our constituents who might be in that type of dilemma? Where's the check on that?
Right. The issue as far as the clarity of the title of the transaction and who holds the property, that's a legal dispute. That would be outside something that the Los Angeles Housing Department could assist on. There are federal agencies, however, the federal government sued for the big lending institutions which provided for the federal registry, which any loan that was foreclosed between the periods of 2009 and 2010 will have this automatic review process. And constituents within the city of Los Angeles can access that database and go online and obtain that information and obtain a series of historical data so that they can see whether or not that foreclosure was done correctly. If it wasn't, then there's remedies available. There's also legal remedies that they can pursue by obtaining their own counsel. As far as the Los Angeles Housing Department goes, obtaining that registration is crucial in order for the Los Angeles Housing Department to obtain an individual that is local, that they can contact when we receive those complaints. We receive complaints daily on properties that are within the foreclosure process. Tenants who are residing, they don't know who to pay. They will be able to obtain that information and will have a clear record of who the current person is and the contact person. And that information is all obtained in the registry. So instead of going to MERS where there wasn't really a clear title, now through our registry, we would be able to obtain that information, have a contact person that we can go to say, look, this property's in disrepair, you need to repair it.
Okay. So at this juncture, it is up to us to inform our constituents. They have those types of options if they're feeling the pressures of trying to get clarity on their title, knowing that there's a pushback from the banks to foreclose on them?
Unfortunately, that's a private issue, and that's something that the Los Angeles Housing Department cannot get into as far as the...
No, I understand that.
Right.
But you mentioned that we have services available for the constituent to seek out support and help. Did I hear you correctly?
No, I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. I just want to clarify, there is a federal agency who now has been established through lawsuits that were obtained from the federal government for the lending practices, the current lending practices. And they can access that database and that information. There's actually an investigation process.
What's the name of this federal agency?
It's the Federal Registry Advisory Board, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System.
Who knows about that?
Well, we do, and if we get calls,
I don't mean to be facetious. Right. It's an important issue, and I'm trying to be clear about how we create knowledgeable constituents to defend themselves. Well, the banks have attorneys, the real estate folks, some are good, some are, and I didn't say anything, well,
the fortunate thing about REAP is that we do have outreach contractors that deal with tenants and assist tenants in providing that type of information, that type of counseling. So as far as for the tenants advocacy, we do have that. For the homeowners, there isn't anything currently that's available. I'm sorry, I do apologize. We do have a landlord outreach contractor, the
You can
Everly
speak on the
Company.
microphone too, it's okay. You're our attorney, aren't we?
We do
Okay.
have the Everly Company as well, who is an outreach contractor that was contracted with Los Angeles Housing Department to assist owners.
Okay.
You know, the foreclosure registry ordinance is really outside the scope of the issue that you're addressing, as Ms. Morales noted. When there's an issue as to who owns the property, that's really, the purpose of the foreclosure registry ordinance is a vehicle by which the city is trying to marshal these properties that are going through some type of transfer of title so that we can remediate and resolve habitability issues. So with respect to a private ownership dispute, and there's a lot of them, that's just simply outside the scope of what the Housing Department would be authorized to provide as far as any kind of legal advice or referral or...
I understand that completely, but it's not often I get to sit in this chair to talk to you directly in this manner. And so I want to be very opportunistic with that. And what I'm trying to say is that if we have data or information that we could relay to our council colleagues, there's a web page, there's a website, a way to refer these services, that is something we should be doing as advocates.
We could create that for you and get back to you on that information.
That would be excellent, and allow my colleagues who are going through these issues, because I know in my district I do a lot of casework, and that casework involves people who are in dire straits, who are desperate, who don't speak English, a good number of them, and don't know where to go, and they're being taken advantage of by all these other entities because they do not know how to look at the big picture or their role in the process. If you can provide this federal service, I didn't know about.
Right, we'll get that to you. We'll get you all the information.
And that helps me. So yes, in an extension to the discussion of the MERS, I think it's relevant to talk about how we are furthering our support and how you are tightening up your approach in dealing with MERS and how we need to essentially close the loop on these other, sounding redundant here, but loopholes. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're making this much more, making ourselves more accountable in how we are recording this information. Would that be accurate?
That is correct. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, anything else you'd like to add? Are we okay?
Yeah, I was just commenting, when we were discussing before we came today, the program has really been successful. I was really struck by the marked decrease in the number of houses that are in the foreclosure registry ordinance, and it went from approximately, 14,000 in 2011 to 2,600 homes in 2012. And I really think that speaks to the good service that's being provided by the Housing Department and by the wisdom of the ordinance. And just wanted to note that as being responsive to the concern of helping property owners get out of the issues that they face with notices of default foreclosure.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Looking forward to that information. So this was number 7, correct?
That's correct, sir.
We did have, did I already pass on 5?
We put 5 on hold because the
Oh, yeah, I
department
forgot.
wasn't present.
Are they back? Boy, they are debating, aren't they? Okay. We do have one card on this, Ruth Sarnoff. Ruth?
I'd like to thank those responsible for closing one of the loopholes in this. And I'd also like to understand where the other part of the sequel clearance is part of this operation. it's not clear to me from what I'm reading here. It's not sufficient information. So I think it's really important. I would like to know why that's even in there. And, I would like to know what the source of moving on that in relationship to the other change. I would like to know to the extent to which the banking industry is weighing in to some of this, and the extent to which I notice in most of the reports that the community impact part of it is not, you're not getting community impact reports back. You have fiscal reports, but you don't have community impact reports. And so I'm trying to understand on the ground, because we work with foreclosures all the time, and we're hemorrhaging right now. It's when we talk about anything that affects hundreds of people, we're not in the right ballpark. We need to affect and provide a way, either through a city moratorium, which the city, I believe, has maybe not the will to do, but has the right to do legally. I think there are cities that have passed it. There are other strategies where people have moved with the county recorder's office. Basically, they're a filing system. They do not check signatures. They do not check the legitimacy. In fact, there was a special on, I don't remember, it was on 60 Minutes, I forget, where, they were asked, what would it take to really verify that these are not fraudulent documents? How much more staffing would it require? And the person just laughed, we can't even keep the filing, going with the staffing that we have. So you can't have underfunded oversight and regulation, and at the same time, cut the budgets of the agencies that do that. And I would really like to know if this is a delaying tactic, this CEQA stuff, and how it's going to affect, because we have a lot of
Thank you, Ms. Arnold.
problems.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. By the way, for the record, I'm with Occupy Fights Foreclosures, but I'm speaking as an individual today because we haven't obviously had a chance to have a position on this. And I have some documents.
Thank you, Ms.
I want
Arnold.
to put into the public record.
Thank you very much. Madam Attorney, on this item, in reference to the question of CEQA, could you address that by any chance? Or is there relevance to CEQA on this?
Well, I would merely note that the public report on page 2 to the City Council dated September 20th, 2012, if I understand the question with respect to the CEQA clearance, it clearly states how CEQA applies to the proposed amendment deleting the MERS registration. And I would just read for the record, because I'm not here to provide legal advice to members of the public, but the continued administrative activities such as a general procedure which makes or creates a government funding mechanism or other fiscal activities which do not involve any commitment to any specific project that may result in a potentially significant environmental impact are not subject to CEQA. This ordinance amends LAMC section 164.04 by deleting the MERS registration as a means of complying with the existing program, and does not commit the city to any specific project that may result in a potentially significant environmental effect.
Okay.
It therefore appears that the ordinance is not subject to CEQA.
Okay.
And that's merely the reference to the CEQA, and I hope that provides some clarity.
Thank you, Britt. Appreciate that. Okay, so we will approve the city attorney's report and ordinance on this matter. That'll be the action of this committee. Okay. I imagine our team on item 5 is still congregating out there. Does anybody know where they went? Whose staff is that? That's CAO and Housing Department?
No, it was a planning report, city planning report.
Well, there was a whole group there, the next thing I know, they walked out, so, all right. We might just have to continue that item. Okay, next item?
We're on item number 8.
Pardon me?
We're on item number 8.
Yes.
CAO and CLA report relative to the return of real property assets conveyed from the former Community Redevelopment Agency of Los Angeles to the city and the authorities required to effectuate the return of such assets to the CRA-LA, a designated local authority, successor agency to the former CRA-LA, pursuant to an order to reverse from the California State Controller in compliance with Assembly Bill 1X26. And this is scheduled pursuant to council action of August 31st, 2012.
I'd like to come on up, please, the staff that's involved in this. We have a few departments. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Michael Keck, CLA's office. As you may recall...
As he takes a deep breath.
It's a lot of
He's
talking.
going to give us a Reader's Digest version, right?
Yeah, I'm
All right.
temporarily here. Back in 2011, CRA-LA, or the former CRA-LA, transferred a number of properties pursuant to the cooperation agreement that was approved with both the city and the CRA-LA, and transferred a number of properties for the city to continue the redevelopment activities on those properties. Subsequently, AB 1X26 invalidated or actually dissolved all redevelopment agencies. And as a result, it is the opinion of DOF that any transfers that occurred, assets, either real property or monetary transfers that occurred after January 2011 were invalidated. As a result, in April 2011, the Controller's Office, the State Controller, issued a letter to reverse all asset transfers. Subsequently, on August 31st, Council approved the transfer of 70 parcels, but retained a total of 28 parcels. To retain the total of 28 parcels. 16 of those parcels are housing assets, 2 properties are under the control of Recreation and Parks, and 10 parcels are collectively referred to as Marlton Square, Westlake, Watts Recreation Youth Center, and the Robert Pitts Youth Center.
Okay, so I'm going to try to give this a shot, okay? I'm going to
Sure. It's a lot of dates. Sorry
So-
for that at you.
What I'm going to try to, okay. So, if I understand you correctly, all the actions we want to take today, the bottom line is we need to have the process to continue to go back to the state entities so that we will know what projects will eventually come back to the city.
Yes, and actually the CAO's office and RWG, our outside counsel, are here to further address the issue, and we're going to go into the
I don't want to steal your
recommendation.
thunder, but, I just want to see if that's what is the bottom line. Please go ahead.
Good morning. Shafia Amir from the CAO's office, and I have with me Robin Harris and Jim Grayson, the city's outside legal counsel for Richards, Watson, and Gershon on CRA dissolution. Regarding the procedure we're doing, yes, we are asking to transfer the properties back. The housing assets that we're transferring back will eventually transfer back to the city under the administration of LAHD, the Housing Department, and that's on a separate track. So we are anticipating those, and CRA is also anticipating transferring those back. The non-housing properties on the list would go into the long-range asset management plan, and there's 3 provisions in the state legislation that provide for the disposition of those properties in the long-range asset management plan. Number 1 is governmental use. So any properties such as the Rec and Parks properties, we anticipate in receiving those back, possibly even outside of the long-range asset management plan because we are discussing that directly with CRA. The second provision is for properties that were part of a previous redevelopment project or area, and some of the properties such as Marlton Square, those, if they have ongoing planned development going on, we can go to CRA and hopefully get those a disposition that would be favorable to the city for that project. The third is for CRA to liquidate any properties which don't fall potentially into the other 2 categories.
Okay, anything else?
Do you have any further questions? Because that answered your
I
question.
mean,
I don't know if you have
yeah, that answered my
questions.
question. I want to make sure you guys did your report. I mean, so
Okay.
is that the extent of your report?
Well, as a result, today we are requesting the transfer of, or the return of 70 assets total, 28 assets total to the CRA LA DLA.
And what does the timeline look like? Let's assume, let's give certain assumptions here. Let's assume that there's the process that's being dictated by the state and the DLA and everything else that's going on. What are the time periods and timeframes are we looking at in terms of getting responses and their analysis, their decision, and we start looking at properties that start coming back? How do you see that progressing?
Sure, and so the assets are, there's basically two categories. There's housing assets and non-housing assets. I can speak about the housing assets. Those ones we're expecting to come over as part, well, the housing department is currently in the meet and confer process with the Department of Finance. They subsequently denied our housing asset list that was originally conveyed or submitted to the Department of Finance by CRA-LA, but on behalf of LHD. And then so LHD is currently in the meet and confer process. We're expecting that to wrap up late January, early February. So whenever we get approval from the Department of Finance of that housing asset list, those assets would transfer pretty quickly over to us. And Robin, do you want to talk about the meet and confer with DOF right now?
Pardon me?
The long-range
The long-range asset
Long-range.
management plan.
Yes, with respect to non-housing properties that are not in governmental use, they would have to wait until the long-range asset management plan is approved, and we anticipate that to be approximately April of next year.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. And I'll ask Ruth Sarnoff to come on up, public comment. Thank you very much. Good morning.
You have a lot going on in your committee.
Yep.
The issue this raises, in my mind, is I always thought that the community redevelopment agencies were supposed to, from day one, be agencies to fight human blight, and quite often they just were places where the gentrification of communities and a lot of movement of poor people out of communities and somewhere else took place. And now I'm concerned that whatever properties and land there is, that the communities in which those lands reside have some way of putting together a plan and influencing how these properties are used. I know there's efforts in East Los Angeles to fight back against some of the land situations there, take back parts of LA. And so I think there's some big, broad issues that need community participation and a real looking at some of the things that have happened during all the bleeding due to the mortgage crisis is that in many cases, communities that were somewhat integrated before are having, because of the targeting of banks of the poorest and the people least able to fight back, are pushed out of communities, and it's changing the cultural character and the cooperation that we need to develop between living in a very multi-ethnic city with great cultural ability to do some good work.
Thank you, Ms. Sarnoff. Thank you very much. Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that, on item number 8, seeing no one else for public comment, we can close the public hearing. We'll approve the CEO and CLA report, and we can schedule this in council. and if needed, allow us the option to agendize this as closed session.
As a potential closed session item.
Yeah. And
Pardon me, Mr. Chair, for the record, we are planning to schedule this for Tuesday, November 20th, pending approval by the council president.
okay, that's great. So November 20th. All right, and 5 will continue, and I'm sorry we have a lot of folks here for number 5 that fill out cards, but we were going to have to continue that item. Okay. So
You may
Also-
open and close.
we'll open and close
This
that.
time if you wish.
You know, we'll leave that open since they get a chance to speak, and if it's going to come back to council, it'll be coming back to this committee, correct? We'll continue that item?
Continue to come back to this committee.
Yes.
All of the items today on the agenda are going to be communications from the chair, in as much as there's not a quorum.
Right.
So there will be a public comment when each of these items goes to council again.
Okay. We'll do that then.
Also, Mr. Chair, pardon me, I believe we do have one speaker for general public comments.
Okay, and who's that speaker? Come on up. Ms. Sarnoff.
I wanted to take this opportunity to share with you a little bit about Occupy Fights foreclosures and what we're doing in the community. And the efforts, we're learning that there are areas where in one zip code, there are like 500, 600, 700 homes already, listed there in the tubes in one zip code. The prospect for this to be going on for a considerable length of time in the country, and we're not seeing anything that would indicate that it's over, but we do know there are certain things that are happening come January 1st. We have the new Homeowners Bill of Rights. We went to Sacramento. We took a busload to Sacramento around that legislation. And we have a lot of people who are pretty educated and have been dealing with foreclosure stuff for a number of years, because it didn't just start in 2008 or 2009 or 2007. It was 2006 and even before that. So, there's a lot of wisdom out there, and it would be smart for those people in the city council who are really concerned about the quality of life in the city. We're creating a tight rental market. We're creating where homeless people in this city are there's many more of them. And now new people that are trying to buy homes, there's no market out there because they've all been bought up by investors. And there's land banking. It's the biggest land grab in the history of our country. It's the biggest land grab. And it's ugly and it's hard to deal with. And I totally sympathize with people in public office who are trying to figure their way out of this one. But it's going to take a lot. And it's going to take something that blocks and forces the banks and these others to either produce, or we begin to go after and begin to prosecute the fraud. And it's not happening in the country, and it needs to happen, because when it happens, it will change the climate of the country.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Arnold.
I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that insight. Thank you. Okay. Well, this meeting is adjourned.